Good day to all of you. I think we can go ahead and start today's lesson. Now, in the previous week, we discussed about some of the key skills that one should possess when they want to become a counselor or a psychotherapist for that matter. Now, today I want to take this one step further and have a discussion about some of the professional skills that one might need when they want to become effective counselors. And on top of those professional skills, I also will discuss a little bit on the ethical aspects that one should be aware about, and also certain cross-cultural effects that you would notice when you practice. So the lecture will discuss quite a lot about the cross-cultural effects more than ethics. But then again, I'll share some materials about ethics so that you can go through those things as well. So today, I'll be discussing primarily about rapport building, importance of listening, how to show respect, empathy, patience, validation, honesty, competence, how to reach goals, and then to have self-disclosure, understanding feelings of the client, putting clients at ease, trust. These are all some of the basic things that you need to have in rapport building. Now, in the previous week also, we discussed some of these things. But today, the basic understanding is I'm not going to go and discuss each one of these, but rather we'll try to have some examples and I will illustrate how these things are established. Okay. And then we'll be discussing about conversational techniques, what kind of conversational techniques are good to have better relations with our clients, and also how some of these conversations would help in improving the outcomes of therapy as well. And then I will also mention a little bit about assertive speech training or assertiveness training. The thing about assertiveness is, assertiveness as the name suggests, is getting our clients to speak up, but not in a way that they would harm the feelings of any other person, but we get their thoughts across. We'll discuss about that as well. And overall, the intention of discussing all of this is to understand how the client therapist relationship can be further improved. Now, let's start from there. Now, I can still remember when I started initially doing therapy. Now, one thing I have to be very clear about is I didn't start my therapy practice because I always wanted to become a therapist. My intention was to one day become a practitioner, but now there are certain problems in Sri Lanka now. Although I have a basic degree for psychology and a master degree for psychology, uh, I did I was specialized in counseling psychology as well, counseling and clinical. But then again, the amount of exposure that one could get into practice as a psychologist in Sri Lanka is very minimal. Why? One is only clinical psychologists can get registered in Sri Lanka Medical Council. So if you are interested in getting registered under the Medical Council, good for you. But I don't think that psychology should come under Medical Council. So there is no specific regulatory body for us. So then if one needs to go rogue, they can go rogue. Now, that's why I said, I was not interested in becoming a practitioner because that was not my interest. Now, somehow, when I started initially practicing, or rather getting experience in 2014, I thought, this is not my calling. It's too much. I can't handle the pressure. I can't see the things people go through. One is I pretty much grew up inside my house in a very small community. And the amount of exposure I had at that time about the society, and when things go wrong for people, my understanding of that was, what I have learned in my university and from my social media and TV and whatnot. So the real essence of problems in our society, for the first time I understood, and for the first time I saw in the hospital. And when I saw that, it was way too much for me to handle. So I decided, look, I'm not going to become a therapist, but I would rather, focus on my own career, maybe do research, something else, or get into academia, which is what I'm doing right now. So somehow, long story short, during COVID, I started, informally practicing because a lot of people were going through a lot of difficulties, and I got a few clients in the sense I didn't charge them anything. They were having their own problems. No one can visit a psychologist, and there were some online services coming up during that time. But then again, a few of the individuals approached me. So my first client was someone who was scared, and the second one was delusional, and the third one was depressed. Likewise, things started, and then I decided to make things slightly more professional, and that's how we registered a company and started to have some supervision for the work that I do, and I started my practice, deep haven counseling. That's how we started it. Now, here I have given some of the things that I have heard from my clients. So I made this presentation some time back, but these are things that we generally hear in our interactions with clients. Now, if you see here, I feel that everyone bullies me and I have lost interest in everything. Why should I live for others? I have no reason to live. I hope I would get hit by a vehicle and die on the road. I feel disgusted because of what I went through. I think I will lose him forever. My daughter was cheated by this man. She lost her virginity. I also am now in a separate relationship and it's going okay. I'm scared police will come to detain me. Can you tell me what? Can you tell me that I will be okay? Now, you see, when you are in this particular profession, you see that a lot of people go through trouble. They suffer. Sometimes they experience certain torment. It's very difficult to articulate to anybody else. And sometimes it is slightly difficult for me to understand as well. I feel bad sometimes listening to their stories. Sometimes some of these stories are relatable, and it definitely makes me upset when it's relatable also. But I sometimes, just like what Jordan Peterson said sometime, like I also wondered, what did I do to deserve to listen to the innermost thoughts of another person? It's not just one person now. Ever since I started this in the COVID times, right up to now, I think I have assisted more than 200 people. And each one comes up with a specific story, a unique set of symptoms, a unique set of issues. So, working in this particular area, as in terms of vocation, it will definitely take a noticeable toll on us. So, to make our practice as effective as possible, then we need to have some best practices. One good thing that I have decided, and one good thing I have noticed or have established, is that having good conversations with our colleagues, to have a support system so that we can have a discussion when things are not so great. There are certain days where you feel overwhelmed after talking to a lot of people. I recently saw one of my students have posted on Instagram that you can't pour from an empty cup. So sometimes you have to take a bit of a break. Sometimes you have to, limit some of the things that you do, because end of the day, you are human being as well. You are human. So we have to understand this. This is a common understanding that all of us should possess, and then from thereby we can proceed to do rest of the things. Now, uh, here I have mentioned that either I sense something others don't, or I'm just very okay for people to just vent out. Now, when you discuss with people, when you have conversations with people, I think I may have explained this earlier. If not, we'll discuss it today. You have to have a greater degree of self awareness. Like what is happening inside you is also pretty important for you to understand everyone else outside. So if you consider most of the philosophers, if you consider some of the earlier, now for example, Albert Ellis developed REBT, that is rational emotive behavior therapy, because in one of the books I read that he was, I think, a video. I saw that he was afraid of approaching girls, so young girls. So he uh, did some reflection to understand what was going inside his mind. So you have to be self-aware about what you go through for you to understand others. I always think that is extremely important, which is why I keep on saying that best psychotherapy comes from personal experiences. So I always ask myself, why do people feel comfortable venting out when they talk to me? It's not just clients, sometimes it's normal people as well. Sometimes it is my friends, sometimes it is my colleagues, and certain days it gets too much. It gets to a level where I feel it's too much. But then again, I need to figure out how to improve myself, how to, be a person of greater service, how to handle these emotions, how to handle these thoughts and all these kind of things. So how I use it with my clients greatly determine the efficacy of the treatment process. So my self-awareness and also how I deal with my clients say a great amount of things about my therapy process. And now here we'll be discussing quite a bit of some of the therapy work that I do. I'm heavily inspired from Albert Ellis and also Dr. Milton Erickson. So I personally believe that sharing some of your experiences and having some of your awareness in that this therapy process is extremely important. So let me just take you through one example. I have met at least 5 to 10 individuals who have obsessive compulsive disorder. Each time I meet these individuals, one thing they say is, look, I have been to other therapists and none of them, were able to listen to what I had to say. All of them just keep on giving recommendations. I once met a fellow, he was given a book, Dialectical Behavior Therapy, activity sheets, go ahead and study this. He said, I know the activities, but it's just I can't go ahead and do all these activities because the moment you leave the next 45 minutes, I'm just lost again. I don't have any control. So how can you help? But unlike, other therapists, I was able to have a discussion with him because one of the reasons is as a kid growing up, I had a lot of obsessive compulsive thoughts myself. I don't say that I had the disorder. You never know because I didn't go for a diagnosis. But then again, I know for sure it was obsessive compulsive thoughts. And I can connect with another person who has OCD very quickly because I have some deeper understanding about how it affected me personally. So, this is where self awareness comes in. Now, let me show you. Now, when I say about self awareness, so when I was studying my bachelor's degree in psychology, I had no idea that this was OCD. But when I did my master's, I knew this is OCD. And when I was in university, I never went through this much of trouble. But then again, uh, the peak of the problem was when I was a kid. Now here, I had a thing for numbers as a kid growing up, where I was obsessed with even numbers, and I always want to, wherever I see a sequence of numbers, I need to add them up, and then upon adding them up, I make certain changes in the process to see. So the adding up process is also slightly different. For example, let's say I keep on watching a movie or something. Suddenly I pause and I see 1 hour, 43 minutes, and 51 seconds have elapsed. So I first combine 1, 43, and 51, and it says 95. Now, sometimes what I do is I combine 9 and 5, so it becomes 14. So 1 and 4 is 5. So 5 is not divisible. It's not an even number. So then I feel bad about myself. That is one particular method I used. And sometimes, I keep 95 as it is. And now it is not divisible, but this is just rule one. Okay, I need to come up with something that is divisible by twos. Now, the next one is 3 hours. Once again, it's just 3, it's not divisible. How about this? 2 hours, 1 minute, and 21 seconds. When you add all these things up, it becomes 24, so which is divisible by 2. Now, here's my assumption 1. Okay, so composite score should always be divisible by 2 until it reaches a number between 0 and 10. And my rule 2 is, now if that's the case, then I can go ahead and further, make calculations. I said this is just one of those, type of things that I do now. Let's say I was watching the movie. Now, this is the number that I got. So I added them up. It's 24. Now, my first assumption is met. Now, let's say when you have OCD, not every person who has OCD go through these kind of things, but when I had it, I think, okay, there is someone that I really care about. So let's say the person was born in 1990, March 28. Now I divide the numbers like this 1990328, and then I add them up, which is 32. So 32 is an even number. You divide it by 2. I always divide it by 2. 16, and then I divide 16 by 2, which is 8. 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. Now, the composite score of the second column should always surpass the answer of the first. Now, here my answer is 24, and my assumption is this particular number that I get, the composite score right here, it should, surpass the first number. So if A and A2, A1 and A2 are met, continue dividing until you reach 2. If 2 is reached, your day is good. Now, here I got 24. The resulting number here should be 32. For example, let's say this particular person is 30 years right now. I add this up to see, what would be the next value. So sometimes I think, okay, this many years are left to him, so I'm okay. So it's irrational. That's exactly the point that I'm trying to make here. And if these numbers keep on getting divided until up to 2, your day is good. So it satisfies your assumption 1 and 2. Now, this is a classic example of OCD. Different people have different types of OCDs. It could be numbers, it could be religious, it could be slightly sexual oriented and stuff like that. So different people have different OCD. And the reason why I can connect with people to a level is that because I said I never had OCD because it never came to a level of distress that I had to go and take medication, but I always know what it means to have obsessive compulsive disorder because it's the same thing. It's just that, I was able to handle it a little bit better than everybody else. I'm not saying it's a skill that I had. It was just, pure luck. But I know about it, which is why I can have a good discussion about this when I talk to people. So when they say, look, I have this and this, I really definitely do take time to have that discussion with them. So, see, here's an example now, just from the previous, not necessarily previous week, this was some time back. One of my clients told me, see, this is the entire conversation. So I typed the verbatim. I cannot look at men. I think it is gay to look at them. I am worried I am becoming gay. Then I said, well, what do you think? Are you becoming gay? He said, no, 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 I am not. Then I asked, if you are sure, then what's the problem? Even if you are becoming one, what's the problem there? He said, I think I have been taught that it is bad, so I have these unusual thoughts all the time, and it bothers me a lot. Then I asked, do you get similar thoughts about others as well? Then he said, I do get bad thoughts of children. I cannot tell you, but I do get, and I don't know why I get them. So now I said I have good idea about, what exactly is happening. So I put another question. I asked, do you get them inside temples as well? Then he said, yeah, yeah, that's what. See, you understand. Then I said, I do, but why does it bother you? What made you think others don't have these thoughts? If I like a good actress, I might have her on my wallpaper. That will be what my friends would know. Does that stop me from having any private thoughts about her to myself? He said, no. Then I asked, what's the problem? Sex is a basic instinct. Have you ever tried accepting them and letting them go? Now, these kind of conversations are very important. Now, if you notice this conversation, at some point I have realized that he was displaying some obsessive compulsive kind of symptoms, which is why I asked, do you get these things inside temple as well? In some sense, I am showing that I know what you are telling me, but at the same time, I am inquiring, and this style of inquiring sometimes help to improve the rapport between the therapist and the client. I am not saying this is the only method to go ahead and do that, but this is something I learned from Dr. Milton Erickson, where he says that if you want to hypnotize someone, if you want to put someone into a trance, the best thing to do is to predict some of the things that the person is thinking. Now, when you have good awareness about yourself and about certain phenomena for that matter, you may predict a little bit about what the other person is experiencing, which of course helps you in understanding more about that other person. And the more accurately you say those things to the other person, the more they are okay with agreeing with you. They don't need to always agree with me, but this is just me trying to have a decent conversation with the person. Now, since I am someone who's doing hypnotherapy as well, this kind of work is extremely good because when they do agree with me, I can, of course, go ahead and do my rest of the work, like the hypnotherapy work, so that I can easily put them into trance. Now, rapport building. See, we will discuss, how exactly the conversation went. So he said, I also have a relationship issue. I told her about my past. It's not a question. I told her about my past. So then I asked, how many relationships and since when? He said, since the age of 17. I had 5 relationships and I'm now 23. My girlfriend now is scared and I don't know how to console her anymore. I just wanted to complain. Then I said, that's good. So if I do the math correctly, you roughly had a girl for a year. So if she did the same math, she knows the next year she will be the victim. Technically, you have given a reason for her to think obsessively about the possibility of losing you. Why? See, now, sometimes I have discussions with my clients so that I can make them put themselves in other people's shoes so that they can understand others' concerns as well. Now, if I need to feel empathy towards my client, I'm required to put myself in their shoes to see their worldview, like what they go through. If that person has a problem with another person, for example, let's say a partner, I want that person to put himself in that person, the particular partner's shoes as well, so that he can understand or she can understand the worldview of the partner. Because I need to make sure that they too also reconcile the things. And I want them to be much more aware about their surrounding, about themselves, and all these kind of things. So that is part of my interest as well. And these are not things that I think can do step by step, but then when you have the principles inside your mind, it comes very naturally. That's the basic idea here. Okay. Now, and these kind of conversations are very logically laid out. So when you work with a client, you need to have your record book. You can actually maintain it from your laptop or whatever as well that is accessible to you. And what I do is I tend to type things as much as possible, especially the verbatim of my clients. The more I note down the word to word things, especially the negative stuff my clients say, the moment I get a sizable amount of things, I can see what kind of decision making they usually have. Do they have any errors in their, you know, logic? Do they have any distortions? So we there is something called cognitive distortion. So we have our normal thoughts, and we have at least a dozen type of distortions, like making false magical conclusions, thinking in yes and no, like dichotomous reasoning, this kind of thing. So I can notice these things via my conversation. So I take good note of those things, and then I keep on observing. I look for the logic. I look for errors people have made. Now, I'm these days writing a research paper about how this kind of maladaptive things could occur in people's, especially in minority populations. Just to give a demonstration as to how that could impact their leadership skills. So once the paper is out, I'd share it with you guys so that you can read and understand how even dichotomous reasoning comes into play in this kind of situations. So this is just for us to have those understanding, okay? Now, why do I talk about all of this? I told that when I started this, I told that we have to have a discussion about the cross-cultural effects of psychotherapy. Why is that? Because see, if you notice, this is just one person. This is a young boy, about 21, 2 years. But when you do psychotherapy, you get quite a lot of clients. Sometimes they are, see here I have mentioned 35-year-old father with two kids, 53-year-old single mother, conservative Buddhist, 28-year-old divorced Muslim, 23-year-old software engineer, 27-year-old sexually frustrated man, 25-year-old modern girl with a history of witnessing extramarital affairs. These are different people who who come to meet you from different walks of life. So, if you are to understand where they are coming from, you have to have a much bigger exposure to the society. I may have told this earlier in phenomenology, there's this thing saying that you can see any problem, but only up to the horizons that your vision reaches. So your vision will reach a wide spectrum of things in front of you, but there is always a specific ending point. That's the horizon. So what is happening beyond that horizon is something that you cannot see. The only way that you can do that is by changing your position. You can change your position by having more self-awareness, having more understanding about the generic issues, understanding what it means to, belong to a specific community, to a specific religion, a group, and whatnot for that matter. Every encounter that you have with the person is something for you to learn, and also it helps you to actually address a macro social problem as well. Now, this is a problem the person is experiencing, but their problem is most of the times felt by quite a lot of other people. So you are in some sense solving a macro social problem as well. So this is one of the reasons why I'm saying that having this understanding is extremely good. Now, these are all techniques that you can do to improve rapport with your clients. Now, this is Dr. Milton Erickson. He has some other methods that he has suggested as well. For example, there's a technique called observation and utilization. Whatever you observe in your conversations with a client, everything in that particular conversation can be utilized. Now, this is a bit of a complicated theory. I am not going to get into that right away. We'll explain and we'll discuss this sometime later. But this is something that I wanted to explain. And the next one is pacing and leading. When your clients speak about stuff, I also, reply to that so that I could feel that him and me are both on the same grounds. Now, if you recall when that person was explaining about his obsessive compulsive thoughts, my style of questioning implies that I know something about what he's going through. His thoughts and all of that, his personal thoughts not yet articulated to me, but I am already telling some of those. So this is what we call pacing. I pace with him. I come to a specific level with him. And when I do that, he accepts, okay, he seems to know what I'm talking about. And then I lead the person. Then I take the person through the conversation that I want to have with that person. So this is what we call pacing and leading. This is extremely important. This extremely important skill in hypnotherapy to put a person into trance. But I have noticed that this particular skill can be effectively used in normal psychotherapy as well. So, and you have to be unique, as Dr. Milton Erickson always say. You can't follow other people's approaches. You have to be unique, and you have to, do your thing and be honest about your experiences and uh, understand cultural dynamics. You have to notice that you have to understand that culture plays a key role, and how we see things changes depending on our culture. What is good in one culture is not in another culture. So you have to learn these cultures. You have to understand what it means to be a member of this particular cultural group. Now, one good example is South Asians, as per the research that I have read, in general, are not very tolerant about different cultures. So one of the reasons why or we experience cultural discomfort when we are in heterogeneous societies, in a sense, extremely diverse societies. And if you notice, most of the although we have different ethnicities in Sri Lanka and India for that matter, most of the times our associations are limited to the same ethnic spheres. I'm saying everyone, but for the most part, we have observed this among our students in foreign countries like United States as well. Now, why is that? That's a particular cultural element. And we have to understand these kind of cultural elements as well. When you know all these kind of things, when you show these kind of things when you talk to your clients, you can easily build trust with your client. So here's another example. See, here's another good example to show how to do a good conversation in therapy. See, client said, I want to make him pay for breaking up with me. I said I drank some medicine. Poor fellow is traumatized by that. Then I said, you took medicine. She said, oh hell no. I was just saying Jack to terrify the fellow. I want to control him. I asked why. She said, he's actually very good looking, better than my two exes. And he sometimes does things without telling me, like buying shoes and stuff, and then I get angry. Then I asked, are you worried that you will lose him? Is that why you need to have all control over him? She said, yes, I am afraid of that. I could lose him and I feel really jealous. Then I asked, why do you feel jealousy? You know he loves you. Then the client said, but I need proof. Then I said, what if after all of this talk, if I don't tell you anything substantial, are you going to be mad about that as well? The client said, of course I'll go crazy. Then I said, then let's talk why you can sometimes handle uncertainty. Do you sometimes doubt your capacity to love him? Or do you think he will find somebody else? And the client said, well, he has his exes on his phone, and I get jealous thinking about that. Then I said, why? If both of you know you love each other, what made you seek assurance of it again and again. Don't you feel that ability to handle uncertainty gets even more affected when you seek reassurance? See, if you go through this particular dialogue, this person wants to seek assurance because this person has some doubt. And this doubt has resulted because of some maladaptive thoughts. What are the maladaptive thoughts here? Because she thinks that he has excess, like previous girlfriends on the phone, and they are good looking and he's good looking, these kind of things. These kind of maladaptive thoughts are all reasons for us to make uh, erroneous decisions and stuff like that. And we have been seeing this in quite a lot of people, especially in romantic couples. This is one of the reasons when she said that she wants to control him. Uh, See here, she says that he's actually very good looking, better than my two exes, and blah blah blah. This is why I asked this question very specifically. Are you afraid or worried that you will lose him? And this is just, tip of the iceberg. So we have noticed this in quite a lot of couples. And you notice the same individuals tend to seek reassurance as well. And part of seeking that reassurance is bombarding the other party with, heck of a lot of messages as well. And then the other party can't tolerate all the messages, and then they sometimes, block you or go all AWOL, this kind of thing. So we have seen. And how do I know we have seen things? So when I had my very first 13 individuals with relationship issues, I put their problems, in a grid like this. This is the grid. If you see this right side, I have mentioned some problems people have, just narrated me. This is not, scientifically proven or anything like that. This is just me making sense of what I have collected for me to have better awareness of my clients. Okay. Now, see here, seeking reassurance, finding proof, dichotomous answers, inability to let go. These are all secondary level problems. And why do these problems come? And I noticed that all these individuals have some self doubt. They have doubts. See, I am holding him for breaking me. I feel like I have power over him. Why do you need to have power over someone? Why do you need to control someone? You need to control someone only if you know that that person is having some possibility of breaking away from you. So you doubt yourself about your capacity to have a decent relationship with that person. So there's always doubts. And then these are all extremely demanding. So demandingness is another component. And then inability to let go, which is why, it kind of like a vicious cycle, keep on nagging you from behind, and then you keep on doing it again and again. So self-doubts, demandingness, inability to let go are the reasons why people hold on to these kind of thoughts, which is one of the reasons why they experience all these secondary level problems. So if you just keeping on addressing these second level problems, nothing is going to change because these things still remain. These are core psychological process, I think, that you have to, I wouldn't say core psychological process, there's something else called core psychological process, but let's say these are primary level. Since these are secondary problems, these are primary issues that has to be addressed. You don't address them, these things will always come in different attires, something like that. Okay, now this is understanding the issue logically, having conversations with people. Now, very similar to this, see here as example. Abstinence, while you have everything in abundance, is different from justifying your abstinence when you don't have any. Now, here's something I learned. When people come and talk to me, sometimes they tell, look, they go all religious sometimes, saying, I have to, I'm very religious, I'm not interested in these things and whatnot. So that's why I have mentioned, see, if you abstaining from a lot of things when you have quite a lot, good. you are doing something. But when you are abstaining, when you are justifying your abstinence because you don't have any, that's not the same thing. So sometimes this is something that you would see in people who are on the verge of going through a nervous breakdown. I once was having a party and I was talking to someone, and this person told me uh, she wants to end the samsaric journey so that she could overcome all the pains and disengage from pleasure. Now I asked, what's wrong with seeking pleasure? And it feels, my dear, that your mission is that of an impossibility not worthwhile pursuing. Now, as I have mentioned here, not to brag, but I know always psychological disturbance, it's something you can see, something you can sense, and you can smell it, a mile level. Because how do we know this? The reason to know all of this, I'm not saying I'm the person who knows all of these things. This is just my experience. And I have noticed these things in people. So if you have a larger group of people and you notice certain patterns, you will notice those things in others as well. It's like you take a sample of 300 and test them over a few variables. You might notice some relationship between those variables, like which one causes which and stuff like that. So if that sample is very random, there needs to be some generalization of those findings in the bigger population as well, so that you meet another person, you can get some fair idea about how those variables would play in that person's life as well, something like that. So I'm not saying I have cracked the code or anything here, but this is just us trying to make sense. Now, these kind of things happen now. These are dysfunctional attitudes and maladaptive thoughts people have, and these things can be amended. But for us to do that, one of the first things is us knowing ourselves, being open to the cultural diversity in your clients and things like that. Those are the important things. Now, just to show on the cross-cultural effects in counseling and psychotherapy, see, uh, I once had a chat with a student in the United States. He's an Indian student. See, did you go anywhere during summer? I asked, like maybe to a nearby state, like a road trip with friends and all of that. And he said, no, I didn't. But just this summer, a friend invited me to his place twice this summer. That's very rare. It's a rare occurrence. Now, if you have some understanding about the academic culture in the United States, summer break is about 3.5 months, where a lot of students go to different states, meet different people, they do odd jobs and stuff like that, and road trips. That's usually how the undergraduate life is. And if someone is saying, I didn't do any of those, and just this time, somebody invited me to their house, and that says something about that person. So this person initially came for some alcohol related issues, 21 years old, and I never believed he had a alcohol issue. But I always knew his alcohol consumption is related to something else. Kind of like the alcohol use is like a co-occurring condition, like a simultaneous issue. See, that's just one incident. He see, casual easygoing Singhal is kind from Kalam. She said, "Oh, you look very different on Google." Then I said, "Must be the beard, where I take a full shave at least twice a year." You can have normal conversations with people. You don't need to always make it extremely formal, where the entire discussion is about the disorders and the symptoms and the problems and all. No, you can have a decent conversation, because those things will work to improve the relationship you and the client would share. Those things are also very important. You can't just go and tell a problem to some complete random stranger. There needs to be at least some friendliness or something in that person. I personally believe that. See, Sri Lankan, homosexual, client. Today is a holiday, so I did oil my hair and no therapist. Ah, that's right. You get these oils from Spa Salon. They have one in Gold Fort, yes. See, likewise, have some normal conversations. And uh, so here's one example as well. Uh, Client, my dad is sick. Unlike other disorders, he will retain his cognitive functions, but his body will not function. I can't see him like that. Then I said, I know it's very difficult and honestly heartbreaking. My grandfather had dementia, and I saw him getting weaker every day. He could not even recognize his own son. But you should be happy because you are doing everything in your capacity to help him. Then the client said, what if he doesn't recollect that I am there for him with the rate of this disease progressing? I said, you said your dad is very jovial. If this happens to someone else, what would your dad want you to do? The client said, he would want me to relax and help. Then the therapist said, which is me, don't you think that he would be expecting the same here from you? And she said, I know, but it's difficult. Then I said, but your conscience will always know you did the maximum you could do. I assume your dad must have brought you toys and all when you were 3 years. Do you remember them? I asked. She said, no, I don't remember them. Then I asked, you didn't remember, but you always had the attachment. And have you wondered how happy your dad must have been when he brings these toys and you just react even without understanding? Uh, Reverse the above. Now it is your turn to reciprocate. You be there for him, and he will always know that you are there. And the client said, or she said, I just don't want to live like this anymore. I have no reason to live. I live to help others and nothing for me. This is a very difficult client. I have been having her for many sessions, and she went through depression, and her father is going through a medical problem as well. And she always believed that she's pro-social. She's helping everyone, but they don't help her. So I asked, so what's wrong with helping others? So since she's Muslim, I asked, tell me about Prophet Muhammad. Didn't he help everyone? She said, I am not religious, and I'm not that person that will go all spiritual when things like this occur. Then I said, good. Then you should do the right thing now and make a decision to improve yourself. Then she said, I cannot. Sorry for being this difficult for you today. There is nothing that is going to help. Then I said, you are being difficult, but I have still not given up, have I? I want you to do the same thing with you. Don't give up. Perhaps you should practice letting go. Now, these kind of things are very common. Yeah, sometimes you have difficult clients. They don't accept. They, defend every negative idea they have. They justify everything. So then the question is, what could I do to change them? Well, still, some days I don't even have an answer as well. But I'm there to have that discussion. I'm there to, make them feel good at least slightly. I want to make them feel good about themselves. I want to empower them. I need to install some kind of hope so that they can take things, forward. So it's not about trying to come to a particular solution, right away. You can't do that in psychotherapy. If someone says that, I would really doubt, what exactly they say. So here's, some of the things that I do when I talk to people. See, Sri Lankan Sinhalese Buddhist female. Uh, this also, one of the tough cases I once had. Took a long while to, sort out the problem. He took my virginity, and I feel disgusted by it now. And I said, why do you feel disgusted by it? In romantic relationships, things happen, and you should not blame yourself for that. What he did will follow him, and you know you didn't do anything wrong. It is him who has become a less of a man by putting you in this tough spot. Don't think that your future is gone. You still can have hope, and someone who is deserving will see you for who you are. You should be thankful that it all ended within a short time. It would have been extremely difficult if this took multiple years and you had to invest psychologically years and years. I think you can keep this as a lesson and will help you realize how harsh world sometimes could be. But you are strong and you will overcome this soon than you think. Just to clarify here, so this was a consensual thing, and they were in a relationship. They were about to get married, but the boy pulled out, in the last moment. So that's the thing. And people go through all sorts of trouble, when it comes to this kind of romantic relationships and whatnot. So gather evidence. That's the thing that you need to do. Spend time reading and understanding all these kind of things. Spend your time wisely gathering information, exposing yourself to different societies, different people, vocations, and whatnot. The more you know, the better it is in matters of psychotherapy. It will increase your awareness. Now, with that, I also have a little bit about the ethics. This presentation was prepared by one of my colleagues, actually. So I just put my name here along next to hers. So that's a good practice as well. You have to give credit. These are not just your own thoughts. So just want to say here, there are some basic ethical principles that psychologists should follow. And if you are a therapist, so faithfulness and honoring commitments, very important. And then respecting the freedom of choice. You can't force or coerce a person to make a specific choice. They will make the choice, but you are providing the required resources for them to make that choice. I know in countries like Sri Lanka, sometimes you might have to make decisions. I once had this conversation with some foreigner, and she thought I don't understand psychotherapy. No, it's not like that. When you work in very rural societies, especially in third world countries, the rural in the first world is very different from the rural in third world. So sometimes you might have to uh, get personally involved in certain things, especially in instances where certain kids go through rape and stuff like that, because sometimes the families come and justify that kind of things. And then a kid is a kid because they are under the protection of parents, and if those parents are delusional and ignorant, then sometimes we might have to make some decisions to help the child. So that kind of situations, you can't. I don't know how exactly the freedom of choice would work there. We have given the choice for parents, but they don't do it well. So then you have to do something. But other than that, when you work with adults, always make sure you give that freedom of choice for them. And everything that we do is for their good, to prevent harm and promote clients' well-being. So this is beneficence and non-maleficence, not to inflict harm, and also things have to be fair. And you have to always ensure respect is there. Personal and professional development is important. So you have respect for you, you have respect for the other person. These are some of the things that you need to have. Now, this is exactly what I wanted to discuss with all of you today, just to give some heads up about what needs to be followed and what it means to have sessions with people from different walks of life, what kind of training we need to have, and how that needs to be taken forward. So yeah, so I just wanted to have that discussion with all of you today, and uh, although although I wanted to specifically discuss about ethics, I don't think going through each and every other ethical principle is the right way to go forward here. Which is exactly why I decided to do this today. So I think this will help you to have a better understanding about psychotherapy, and yeah, so I'll have a similar session very soon with all of you, and then we'll stay tuned. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment or drop me a text, whatever that works for you. So I'll see you. Thank you very much, and have a good rest of the week ahead. Thank you.